one.
All of you know in your gut, this is a critical moment for our democracy.
Thank
I'm
you.
running for president of the United
How
States
long we
because
have
I
left on the
believe
video?
we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. I believe that everyone, and I mean everyone, deserves to be treated with dignity and
30
respect.
seconds.
And I believe that the American dream is big enough for all of us. I mean all of us. Latinos have contributed so much to our country. Whether you've been here for generations or whether you're a dreamer whose family arrived recently, you're part of the fabric of America. You're Americans. And when I'm president, I'll stand with you for the battles that are about to come. I'm optimistic. I remain optimistic. I continue to be optimistic that if we work together to fulfill the ideals of this nation, value hard work, opportunity, and the American dream, we'll get there. This is the most important election of our lifetimes, and we need the leadership of the Latino community, your voices and your votes. I hope you'll join me as we continue to build on the progress we've made and reminding our leaders that families belong together. That's our American family. We belong together, all of us. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
Here we go.
All of you know, and you're
Awesome. That's so cute.
Thank you for joining for this very special Todos con Biden conversation today. I'm honored to be with all of you. I'm Cristóbal Alex, Senior Advisor to Vice President Biden, and I hope that you are safe and sound during this crisis. As Vice President Biden has often said, Latinos are the future of this country. More than a quarter of K through 12 students are Latinos. We are entrepreneurs, we're dreamers, doctors. We're on the front lines of this COVID-19 crisis. And we must invest in that future. Looking towards November, there'll be more than 32 million eligible Latino voters. That means we are the largest non-white voting ethnic bloc in this country. And we're poised to be difference makers in this election. But to know your future is to know your past. And now more than ever, we must take stock of who we are as a community, our history, and our value to our beautiful and great nation. So today, I'm excited to be joined by 4 of our incredible heroes. First, we're going to hear from John Leguizamo, actor, producer, Broadway star, Tony Award winner. My favorite thing that he's done is Latin History for Morons. I was a moron before I watched your show, John, and he's going to kick us off.
I still am.
He's going to kick us off with some history and setting the table for this conversation. Then we're going to turn to Dolores Huerta, civil rights icon, co-founder of an entire movement. We're so honored to have you, Dolores, as a migrant, as the son of a migrant farm worker from Zacatecas, Mexico. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about how you got to this point and how you're driving this country forward. Then we're going to hear from the very first Latina to serve in the United States cabinet, a dear friend, one of the very first endorsers of Vice President Biden and a champion for our gente, Secretary of Labor, Hilda Solis. And then finally, we're going to hear from Veronica Escobar, who lives just a few blocks from my mom's house in the most beautiful city in the world, El Paso, Texas. Veronica, you made history in 2018 along with Congresswoman Garcia from Houston as the very first Latinas to be elected to Congress in Texas. And that's a really big deal to our entire community. So without further ado, let's kick off tonight's conversation. John?
Thank you, Cristobal. Thank you. And you're right. Knowing your history is knowing your power. So I'm going to give you a little Latin history for short attention spans kind of view, okay? So first of all, you got to understand we came from some of the greatest empires the world has ever known, the Incas, the Mayas, the Aztecs. The Incan Empire was 3 times bigger than any empire at the time, bigger than the Ming Dynasty, bigger than Tsarist Russia, bigger than the Ottoman Empire. The Incas had invented surgery, brain surgery with anesthesia, and they had a binary code that predated computers. The Mayans invented the concept of zero. Before them, there was no number to call nothing, right? And then we gave the world the most important foods. We gave you corn, potatoes, tomatoes, chocolate, and chilies. Can you believe that? There was no spicy food before us. And look, let me give you a little rundown. So it's a terrible circle, but I'm trying to do it on Zoom. And we are 20% of the US population, right? And we are 25% of the US box office and less than 1% of the stories being told by Hollywood. And yet we contribute $2.3 trillion upside down to the US economy. If we were our own country, we'd be the 10th largest country in the world. We're bigger than England. We're like the 4th largest state in America. And our women are number 1 in small business creations at 87%. And we save the housing market with 68% of total sales. So if you know this about your history, about your people, knowing that we are the only minority that's fought in every single war America's ever had, and I'm talking about the Revolutionary War, I'm talking about the Civil War, I'm talking about all World War wars, and we were the most decorated minority in each and every single one of those wars, then you'll understand that no matter if they try to oppress us, demean us, exclude us, we're still contributing. And being Latin is having a superpower. Just know that. Back to you.
John, thank you. I love that superpower.
That calls for aplauso.
Gracias, mamita.
There's a lot more you can see from John's history. Yeah, definitely. The Latin history for morons. That was beautiful. And you mentioned women being leaders in our community, in business and beyond. And we're lucky to have most important women icons, civil rights icons in the history of our great nation, and Dolores Huerta. Dolores, please, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, we know that there are a lot of great Latinas that are out there in the forefront. We have our great Justice, Sonia Sotomayor. We have Maria Rosa, who's doing her great work with the media. We have Lucille Roybal and many others in the U.S. Congress. And of course, we've got with us today one of my great heroines, and that is Hilda Solis, who will be speaking shortly. But I do want to say, I want to just add to what John was saying, because we continue to be leaders. You gave us this great history of, what we are as Latinos in the world. But then when we think about, and I keep thinking about all of the frontline workers they keep talking about, and they keep applauding them and they keep showing them on television. But there's one group that they keep forgetting. And that is the farm workers that are working every single day to keep us fed in this nation. And somehow they forget about them. And of course, recently when many of the packing shed workers got really sick in the meat and the poultry industry, but there were other farm workers also that are out there working that also became very sick with this pandemic that we're living through. And so when we think about the contributions of Latinos, in addition to what you mentioned, John, they are the ones that are keeping us fed. Every single day they put the meals on our table. They are also keeping us clean because they're out there, cleaning the buildings and sanitizing the buildings, so that everybody that works in an office can actually be safe and clean. They're keeping us sheltered, because so many of the construction workers that are out there are Latinos also building our homes, and then they're keeping us safe also. So here we have all of these millions of Latinos throughout the United States of America that are keeping the rest of the citizens safe and sound. And so we have to remember them. And when they talk about these frontline workers, let's give them the recognition, give them the respect, and the publicity that they also deserve during this hard time that we're going through this pandemic. And of course, this is always because Latinos, they're known for their hard work, unlike some of the portrayals that some people have tried to depict them. They're, Latinos are very, and the immigrants that come to our country, they revitalize the country. And, one of the things I like to say is that, every 20 years, we've had a legalization program. Now we're kind of past that. It's been a long time since we've had a good legalization program. And as we've done throughout our past in the United States of America, make sure that all of the immigrants that have come here, that they are respected. And yes, we are going to make a difference, and we do make a difference. And we know that, especially in this time now, we really got to get mobilized. And I want to say just one other thing too. the attacks that have been leveled against our community, and to make them fearful and to make them afraid, and terrorizing them the way that they have been has really, it's really impacted a lot in terms of many of our folks have been even afraid to participate in the census, which we know is going to devastate our communities if we do not get the money that we should coming into our communities now for our schools and our hospitals and our infrastructure and things that we need. So we have a lot of work to do in our community. But one thing about us, we are, you might say, we are very, very strong. We're not afraid to take on the challenges. And we know we have a new one coming on right now, and we're ready for that one too.
Yes, we can.
That's right.
Dolores coined that phrase. You know that, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much, Dolores. Wow. Real honor again to be with you today. And as you mentioned, Latinos are really on the front lines right now. There are over 30,000 dreamers who are working in hospitals, who are putting their lives at risk to keep us safe. And as you heard from Vice President Biden, really calling on Trump and the administration to drop their lawsuit that seeks to rescind DACA, something that he and President Obama fought for and put into law. Now that's under threat. And so not only are dreamers putting their lives on the line to protect all of us, but they have to worry about DACA being rescinded. And then you mentioned the importance of essential workers on the front lines, farm workers, and the Vice President put out a statement on Cesar Chavez Day recognizing the great contribution of farm workers to our country, the movement that you helped build, Dolores, but also calling for additional protections for farm workers. And when it comes to the meatpacking workers that you mentioned, tomorrow at noon, if folks are able, they should tune in to LULAC's town hall they're doing with Univision. The Vice President Biden will be on the town hall to talk about essential workers and meatpackers especially. So please tune into that. And talking about protecting our gente, we mentioned Secretary Solis. She is now the county supervisor in LA and is doing a lot of work there and beyond to make sure that our gente are protected. Let me turn to you next, Secretary Solis.
Thank you. Thank you, Cristobal, and thank you, Congresswoman Escobar and Dolores. Good to see you. And John, love everything that you all are talking about. I'm excited because whenever we are in, in that situation where people think that fear is somehow dominating all parts of our life, Latinos are resilient. We stand up and we say, no se puede. We have to move forward. And I'm very excited with some of the work that I've been seeing around the country with a lot of Latino leaders helping to really drill down and look organically at how we deal with this pandemic that is devastating our community. It has savaged many people of color, African Americans, but more importantly, the Latino community right here in LA County. We are one of the largest segments of the population, 60% now in LA County. And I want to say that 38% of those people that have been impacted by COVID, the coronavirus, have been Latinos. We far surpass any other ethnic group. And the fact of the matter is that some of our community are so intimidated because they feel that the government, the federal government, is going to crack down on them. They are resisting coming in and getting tested. And we're providing free testing for our people here, as well as making sure that we're providing alimentos, food for people, because many people have lost their jobs, especially those first responders that that you all talked about. But more importantly, we're also seeing that there is food insecurity. A lot of people that are going hungry. Dolores, yesterday I was out in Pomona. We fed about 3,000 people. The other day it was 10,000 in East LA, and it keeps growing with every week if we don't get back our economy put together, but also making sure that we have guarantees for those first responders, meaning the janitorial staff, meaning the in-home healthcare service workers, the farm workers, the people that take care of our elderly. The fastest number of folks that are being impacted right now, in fact, are those people that are in nursing homes that are taking care of those people. The majority are women, and the majority are women of color. So we need to do some fast work here. I know Joe Biden can help us get there because he's dealt with pandemics before, and I've seen it firsthand. I know that he'll help us jumpstart the economy. He did it with the Recovery Act. and with the Middle Class Task Force. And I got to serve with him, learning from him and doing so many great things to protect all of our Latino communities. But I will say one thing, he's a very strong advocate for women. And I got to work with him in the Congresswoman, when I was back there back in 2003, and we worked on the Violence Against Women Act. And I was co-chair of the Women's Caucus at that time. And believe me, it was tough then and it's tough now. And I know that he can help take us through. So I'm 100% there and look forward to this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Secretary, for all of your hard work and being a champion for our community in Los Angeles and California and well beyond. Next, I want to turn to Veronica Escobar, a good friend, leader in El Paso. Please take it away.
Thank you, Cristobal. And I want to say how thrilled I am to be having a conversation with you, my dear friend, Cristobal, with two incredible trailblazing Latina women who have paved the way for women like me to be able to do the work that I'm doing. And I'm such a fangirl. John Leguizamo, to be able to have a conversation with him too. I love you. You're just so talented.
I love you too. I'm a big fan of you.
Aw, thank you. And I am thrilled to be coming to all of you, participating and watching from home. Here I am sitting in the beautiful, magical, safe, and secure U.S.-Mexican border community of El Paso, Texas. And El Paso and the border have been, unfortunately, at the center of so many of this administration's hateful and cruel anti-immigrant policies. And, you know, everything that the Secretary and that Dolores have mentioned, and John, about our history and about the pandemic and everything that we're facing, there really is no more crucial election that we as Latinos have than this one, than this presidential election. You know, El Paso was the testing ground and has been the testing ground, unfortunately, for things like family separation, for the return to Mexico policy. We've been the site of incredible cruelty that really our generation, I think, has never even imagined could happen in the United States of America. We have had a target put on our back by this administration, by this president, with his bigoted, racist, hateful language that specifically targets Latinos and immigrants, language that has given fuel to people who have hatred in their heart. And you all watching at home, and I know the folks that I'm fortunate enough to be on this conversation with, you all know that on August 3rd of last year, we were the target of that hate. We had a killer who drove over 600 miles specifically to target people who are immigrants, look like immigrants, and people in a Hispanic Mexican community. And he took 23 lives. Just last week, we lost another life, coach nicknamed Tank. His wife and his kids were helping him fight for his life ever since that August 3rd shooting. And last week he lost his life. So yet another victim of really the consequences of an administration, I believe, fueled by hate and bigotry that then fuels violence in safe and secure, loving communities. But I think the message that is so important to deliver to everybody across the country is that in the face of that hate, the beauty of El Paso is that we fought back with love. Love for one another, love for the stranger, love for America, love for our community. And that's who we are as Latinos. We give so much to this country and to one another, but we have to make sure that we take our future into our hands by voting this November, by taking back this country that has been overrun by values that are unrecognizable to us, and making sure that we fight for everybody in the United States of America. And that's why I'm excited to be on Team Joe and so excited to be in on this conversation today.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We are so excited to have you on today. And let me just give you a quick thank you for your leadership in El Paso. That was a very, it was a horrific tragedy. Our I remember being with Vice President Biden in Las Vegas when we got word of the massacre, and he wanted to call you. He reached out to you. I know you had a meaningful conversation. This is a major issue for Vice President Biden. As you all know, he beat the NRA not once but twice, and is committed to dealing with this as president. So Veronica, thank you. Very excited to have you on this team and leading that fight. We want to move into the conversation now. I want to start with a two-part question for all of you. We all come to politics and to this work for our own personal reasons. My mom, like Dolores, was a migrant farm worker. That had a great impact on me. Others have had something in their lives when they were growing up, when they were young, that put them on this path. So I want to know from you, what happened when you were growing up to put you on this path for civic engagement, to strengthen our democracy, for this social justice work, as I think of it. And then second, all of you have endorsed Vice President Biden. Dolores, you just on Friday, May 1st, International Workers' Day, endorsed Vice President Biden, which was a huge honor for the Vice President and for all of us. It meant so much to the community. So the second part of the question is, why are you supporting Vice President Biden? So let me open it up.
Well, I think, going back, when I was a teenager and seeing all of the racism around me, not only against myself, but against my friends who were African-American, Filipino, Chinese, Japanese. I grew up in a very ethnically mixed neighborhood in Stockton, California, where I grew up. And just seeing the constant racism that was leveled against us in our high school, on the streets with police, and you just get all of this anger that really gets pent up, and you don't really know how to deal with it. And then knowing as an organizer how you can actually challenge, you can change some of these conditions, which unfortunately we know that still exist today and that have really been escalated by our current president against people of color. But, then you get into this kind of frame of mind that we really got to change this. And that's, of course, as you know, what I have been working my entire life for. And, of course, this is exactly why we have to work as hard as we possibly can to make sure that Joe Biden gets elected to be president, because we know that this is a person who is a very decent person. The other thing, too, is, I have been working in the labor movement with farm workers and now as a community organizer. And when we see that the working people, who are the majority of the people in the United States of America, and that they are so often ignored, and not only that, but they actually are, you might say, I'm going to use the word almost persecuted, including the labor organizations, the leaders of the labor movement, passing laws that make it more difficult for people to organize instead of helping the working people in our country. We see that they have actually been oppressed. The wages have been going down, and so we have this great inequity that we have in our system right now. So we need a president that's going to be able to change that. And the one thing that we do know about Vice President Biden, that he has always been a champion for working people. He has always stood up for labor organizations. He has always made sure that the prevailing wage issues are always followed when they go into new areas, do any type of construction, so that workers, even if they don't have a union, that they are paid the same wages as other workers. And we know, again, with President Obama, he will be one person that makes sure that everybody is covered with health care. And, we were talking earlier, I was talking earlier about the people that are the invisible people, the ones that are not respected. So many of our Latinos, and in places like Texas and many of the places throughout the country, they don't have health care. We're very lucky in California because we've got a great legislature. We've got great, leaders in our legislature. We've got a great governor, Newsom, and of course before that Jerry Brown. So we're really more fortunate than they are. But when we think about the other states and we think of how many Latinos do not have any type of health care, well, one thing that we do know is that Joe Biden is going to go out there and he's going to fight to make sure that every single person in the United States has health care, whether you're a farm worker, a hospital worker, whatever you do, that you're going to be covered with health care.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Speaking of labor, Secretary Solis, you've been in this for a long time in the fight to make sure that we have labor protections. Can you pick up on that?
Yeah, I would just, going back to my own family, my dad was a shop steward for the Teamsters. And we grew up in a big, hefty household, 7 of us, 5 girls, 2 boys. Mom didn't have to go to work till later on, and she worked as a United Rubber worker at a Mattel toy factory. So we had to also pick up our chores. We were very nuclear family and traditional in so many ways. But beyond that, you went outside and you didn't see yourself reflected in schools, in colleges, in prestigious positions. In fact, we were told we couldn't speak Spanish in our classes when I was growing up. And I know that for us, where I grew up, we lived about a mile away from one of the largest landfills this side of the Mississippi, the Puente Hills landfill. So I grew up surrounded by toxics, places that living conditions wouldn't be tolerated. If you were from Beverly Hills zip code, you would never see these kind of egregious factories spewing contaminants and lead poisoning into the water. And unfortunately, my father worked at one of those recycling plants, a battery recycling plant. He got to organize the workers who were all Latino, 300 of them, but he was their spokesperson. It's through his eyes and his words and my mother's that I learned how important it was to speak up and to not give up the fight. And sometimes you feel like you're alone, but there are other people out there that come to you. They gravitate because they understand that this is a bigger and greater cause. I learned that from people like Dolores, from Cesar Chavez, and from studying other things through my own history and knowing more that there are opportunities for us, for women. I was very fortunate to be able to learn from them and serve in the legislature in California and in the Congress and work on issues with Biden. Joe Biden, he's the one that actually helped us craft how we were going to take care of the middle class. And President Obama put him in charge of that. We're talking about a time in 2009 when we were hemorrhaging 600,000 jobs a month. Can you imagine having to report that every month and you didn't know if there was going to be light at the end of the tunnel? Well, there was, but it took a lot of work, and it took going out around the country, going to Texas, going to Washington State, going to Homestead, Florida, going to New York, going to Wisconsin and Michigan, and making sure that we put investments, money into public-private partnerships. Guess who brought back the automobile industry? It was Biden, our team, and the president. And I'll never forget that. I saw so much hemorrhaging around the country, but never did he ever stop by saying, pull back and don't help people of color. He was right there with us, with the Latinos. We had a whole initiative on trying to get more enforcement officers, 300 of them that we hired at Department of Labor to crack down on wage theft. And we did it because we had money that was made available. And labor loved the VP. And I know that that's what's going to help to carry us through, because he's not going to forget the middle class, both men and women, and our young people, especially those young immigrants that are fighting for a chance right now. So with that, I would just say there's no choice. The only choice for us is Biden. And if we don't come out to vote, and we really need to just expound on the differences between his philosophy, what he believes in, and his humanity. His humanity says so much to the world, to world leaders. And I got to see him interplay with different foreign leaders around the world, around the planet, in Latin America. And they all respect him because he had 36 years in the Senate and working on foreign relations, international relations, and then 8 years as our vice president. That was a lot of great experience. Don't without a doubt think that he can't get this done on day one.
So Hilda, when you say you were talking about the president, I guess that was President Obama you were talking about?
Yeah.
And Hilda, I think I remember when you were being appointed to the cabinet position that Joe Biden was one of your biggest supporters in that position, right? Because there were some people that thought that you were too progressive to be put as the Secretary of Labor.
That's right. Yeah.
And speaking of progressive, I used to be a Bernie bro. And I flipped over to Biden because I know he's picked up some of Bernie's free tuition for people under who are making under $125,000 a year, and free colleges. And that's really important to me because that's when I was going to school in Queens, Elmhurst, which is now one of the biggest COVID for Latin people in New York City, some of the most deaths and the most people in ICU and ventilators at Elmer's Hospital, where I grew up, because Latin people are at the forefront. We're delivering food. We're doing all the work. We're cooking it. We're driving the paramedics around. We're nurses. We're doctors. I mean, we're doing it all and getting sick, because we need to, help people, because that's what Latin people are about. And I got into politics because when I was going into these tough public schools, we weren't in the textbooks, we weren't in literature, we were just so invisible. It was so hard to project yourself into the future without seeing yourself being successful. But I knew, I grew up with the biggest melting pot, Elmhurst, which was Mexicanos, todos estaban ahí, órale, no manches, güey. Argentinos, oye, pibe, yo no sabía, no joder, no sabían de qué estaba haciendo ese pibe. We had everybody there. Los boricuas estaban ahí también, pero chévere. And I grew up knowing that we were a vital, intelligent, capable community, and we were stronger together. And that's why I know Biden has been for the Latin community, because him and Obama started DACA, and they've been fighting for that, for immigration reform. The free tuition is a big deal for Latin people, because we need to get educated so we can get to the places that we need to get. And that's why I'm for Biden.
I love the stronger together component of that, because, one of the things about Latino families, and it's true regardless of what kind of Latino family you come from, especially the bigger the family, it's a team. You're all one team in it together, taking care of one another. And Cristobal, El Paso very well. It's your hometown. It's it's a majority Hispanic community, and there's a lot of Catholics. I am a Catholic. And so I grew up with those values of not just being a team and not just working together, but also taking care of one another. I grew up going to church, learning about whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, right? And so those are the values that shaped me and have shaped my politics. And those are values that I learned in my family, that I learned in my community. And when you look at what's happened in our country, especially over the last 3 years, Trump is not the entire cause of the challenges that we face in our country, or have faced over the last 3 years, but he has furthered a divide between people that is really heartbreaking. And he has elevated people whose values are actually harmful and contrary to the foundation of the United States. When you look at Charlottesville, for example, what happened in Charlottesville with racists yelling, "Jews will not replace us," carrying their tiki torches or whatever those are.
Unacceptable.
Yeah, and he said there are good people on both sides. He's saying it again as masked gunmen are storming state houses to intimidate and threaten lawmakers, to essentially frighten them into not taking care of their constituency. And so in so many ways, this president brings out the worst in people. We need a leader that brings out the best in people, a leader that pulls on his own compassion and his own views about how we can be united. We're not ever going to agree. I belong to a very vibrant, diverse Democratic caucus in the House. I love that. We have some of the most progressive members. We have some of the most conservative members within our Democratic Party. We need unity. We need to look forward about how we're going to heal this country and about how we are going to take care of one another again and reconnect with those values that make America special.
You're so right. It's called the United States of America, not the divided states of America. You need somebody who's going to unify, and Biden's the guy.
That's right.
No, I would like to kind of go back to the issue of education, because I know then when Joe Biden gets elected president, that we will have a Secretary of Education that believes in public schools, and that we can get down in there and change. Well, when we talk about these people that are storming the capitals and demanding that they open up the economy, and we think that these are the Trump supporters, and we have to kind of pray for them. Vijay, I'm glad you said that about them, because I think we have to pray for them. But the other thing that we have to do is we have to get into our educational system and we, erase the ignorance, be able to teach exactly what John was doing on the chalkboard about the contribution of Latinos to this country and the contribution of Native Americans, African Americans, people from Asia, so we could erase that ignorance and get rid of the racism. But in order to do that, we've got to have a strong leader like Joe Biden, a strong Secretary of Education, and put this education into all of our elementary schools, into our high schools, so that we can make sure that we have a country that is you might say illuminated, enlightened, so that we can get rid of this racism and stopping the school to prison pipeline and get rid of these terrible criminal justice issues that we have right now, where so many people of color are the ones that are being affected by these terrible racial policies.
That's right.
It's interesting. They've come up with
the equalizer.
They've come up with the secret formula for great public schools. It's one thing: money. All they need is money. If you can get money to public schools, that's the best fix. And Betsy DeVos is the most dangerous and horrific Secretary of Education that I've ever seen, taking out millions of dollars from public schools, trying to create her voucher program and destroying. Because Latin people in the big cities were 50% of the public school in students, and we need better schools, and Biden will fight for that.
He certainly will, and it's near and dear to his heart, partly because Dr. Biden is a lifelong educator. Someone who has put all of her heart and soul into educating our communities. And I think they both have said this on numerous occasions. We're going to have an educator be the Secretary of Education, and there'll be investments in education, K through 12, before that, and also making sure that we have access to free public schools, higher education as well. Talking about the issues for a minute, I want to take one step back. You mentioned, John, the importance of education and why you came over from Bernie to Joe Biden. And I think all of us owe a great debt of gratitude to Senator Sanders for the movement that he built. So many of our friends, our cousins, our brothers, our sisters were part of that movement and put their heart and souls into it. And as you heard, when they were together, Vice President Biden and Senator Sanders, when Senator Sanders endorsed, the Vice President was very gracious about that, letting folks know that they have a home here with our campaign. And I would urge all of us to make sure that we're letting our friends know that they have a home here, and that Vice President Biden has been a long time progressive, not only talking about progressive values, but at the forefront of these issues that matter, whether it's advocating for the Violence Against Women's Act, the very first climate change legislation, fighting the NRA and beating them not once but twice, and many, many more issues. And so sticking with issues for a minute, I want to go back to the group again and talk about what issues do you think are most important to the Latino community in this election?
Oh, I think we have to talk about jobs. I want to say here in Kern County, while the farm workers are still working, guess what? A lot of the oil workers, these are mostly Latinos that work in the oil fields here in Kern County. And as you know, oil has plunged. And so there has to be some kind of a job recovery and trying to get these workers into eco-friendly jobs so that, we can stop the pollution of our planet. And I know that Vice President Biden is a very, very strong supporter, as you just said, of the environment. But we have to keep thinking about all of these workers that work in the oil fields. Where are they going to go? And we know that many of the eco-friendly jobs, they don't pay as much as they do when they work in the oil fields. And so many of these jobs are temporary, but we know that there's a great need for many jobs in the health industry, for instance. And we need a lot of nurses. We need a lot of Latino doctors, Latino nurses, bilingual people. There's a lot of jobs that have to be created in the technology industry. So, and I know that Vice President Biden has always been very, very big on job training. And so I think this is one area where he can really excel But as was mentioned by Veronica, he can't do it alone. We've got to make sure that we also elect people in the Congress and the Senate that will support him and that will give the resources that are needed to be able to make sure that we can create these jobs and make sure that everybody is fully employed in our country.
You know, I can speak. So I've been knocking on doors in El Paso for over 20 years, whether it's for other candidates or for me when I was in local government or when I ran for Congress. And I'm going to keep knocking on doors. I'm ready to knock on doors again as soon as we're able to. But there's a couple of things I think that are really important. I think number one of the things I've learned is that all of the issues that are important to all Americans are also important to Latinos. Dolores mentioned the environment, the economy, jobs. We've talked about healthcare, education. You know, I think that the second thing I think is what this pandemic has, I hope, really made very clear for all of us is the fact that we live in two Americas. And when it comes to the economy, there was a lot of talk about how great the economy was, but yet most Americans couldn't even survive an emergency because they didn't even have $400 in their savings account. Dolores mentioned how many communities across the country don't have access to health care. Well, in Texas, our governor is helping lead the fight to overturn Obamacare in the Supreme Court. So we have a governor that's actually trying to health care. And so issue after issue after issue, the eroded safety net, the erosions to those safety net, that's all become so clear during the pandemic. But I do think also my hope is that an additional issue that was viewed differently before is now viewed in a more humane way, and that's immigration. And, lots of people have said for a long time, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We need, these laws are outdated. But what we have seen, and what I hope the country has seen, is that we've taken this president and this government has taken a very broken system and shattered it completely. When you have a government that can separate babies from their moms and put children in cages and force feed asylum seekers who are on hunger strike because they've been in jail for over a year, or send asylum seekers into another country that is not their own, that we have to realize the vulnerabilities that exist for immigrants in this country. We have to live up to the values in the Emma Lazarus poem that is on the Statue of Liberty. We've got to reconnect with who we are. So all those issues that are kitchen table issues for all Americans, they're Latino issues as well. But we've also got to fight for the dignity for every human being, every human being.
Chris, could I jump in? I just want to say I agree with everybody that has said everything so far. I just want to raise an issue regarding homelessness. In California, we are the, how could I say, nuclear zone where we have the largest number of homeless people. And I would tell you that in my district, which is about 60% Latino, the majority of the homeless are Latinos, and they're young people. And it's really unfortunate. So there is a divide, and especially because of the pandemic, you can see the disparity in terms of the treatment, the lack of access, and the fact that we're not doing enough education, bilingually, culturally competent information, and even providing sufficient funding for our federally qualified clinics, which I know Joe Biden will help to support. Because we need that local treatment at that level. We don't have the ability to have hospitals everywhere. So we need to support these federally qualified clinics that can do the job, but also help address the disparities that exist in our healthcare system. And I know Joe Biden has a record for being able to negotiate. He's the one that got into the Congress, in the Senate and the House to help to work to get the ACA passed, the Obamacare Act. And I know he'll do it again. And without any doubt, I know that he's going to also fight for a public option, which I think is going to be fantastic. We have that plan right here in California, and it's working really well. Thank
John,
you.
did you want to add to that?
You say John?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know Biden worked with Obama on the Affordable Care Act, and I think those are what Dolores has said, and Veronica, and you, Cristobal, all of you have said, it's jobs. Jobs is really important to land people because the discrepancy between the rich and the poor and the middle class is just disappearing. And the gap is getting bigger and bigger. And we need somebody who's going to take money from the wealthy and put it where it needs to be. Tax the rich and save the middle class and the working class. And I know Biden has always been for the working class. And that's, I think, is really important to land people. Education, healthcare, and jobs. And all my great panelists have pointed that out.
Yeah, jobs. And, for a long time, folks would refer, and still today, to Vice President Biden as middle-class Joe. He tells a story that some folks meant that not as a compliment, right? Try to talk down to him by calling him middle-class Joe. But he takes it as a compliment because he stands with workers. He knows that a middle class is what built the backbone of this country. And so when he wins election in November, as he said, everybody's coming along this time when we rebuild the middle class. And that means a lot to our community, to the labor movement, to all of us.
And raising the minimum wage. Raising the minimum wage, Cristobal.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Raising the minimum wage, right? I know he's there. And
that labor unions are what creates the middle class. And without a middle class in America, you don't have a democracy. And that is what is at risk right now with the current administration, because they are destroying all of the institutions that really guarantee our democracy, including labor organizations. And one other little thing, I think Hilda mentioned about the vice president's relationship with the leaders of other countries. And we know that the relationships with Latin America and Mexico have just been devastated under this Trump administration. And I know that Joe Biden will be one that will actually improve those relationships that we have with Mexico and with Latin America, and not look at those countries as the back porch of the United States of America, but really as partners that we can really help them with our technology that we have to improve their institutions also. So I think that's something that we really have to think about also.
And I want to say one more thing about the values that the vice president is going to fight for, and and what it is that Americans want. We in the Congress, the Democratic majority, the incredible Democratic majority led by the amazing, incomparable Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, we raised the minimum wage. We've passed law after law after law that an agenda that we call the For the People agenda, an agenda that many of us brought with us, fresh off the campaign trail, everything that people told us they wanted, which was to shore up the Affordable Care Act, common sense gun violence legislation, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, equity for women, you name it, bill after bill after bill, went through our committees, went through debate on the House floor. We passed those bills, sent them over to a Senate that unfortunately is led by Mitch McConnell, who calls himself the Grim Reaper because he's uninterested in passing legislation and who only does the bidding of President Donald Trump. So we need President Joe Biden. We've got to flip the Senate. We've got to expand our majority in the House.
We're close to flipping that Senate.
That's right. That's right. And all of the great legislation that we passed because the American people gave us a majority in the House during the midterms, we can finally move all of that and get our For the People agenda done for the American people.
And by the way, Biden was out there helping those folks get elected, so he knows what it takes to walk the talk and talk the walk. So that big difference between these other folks. So I mean, he's going to be right there for us. So I'm so excited to be a part of this panel and this team.
I'm with you, Hilda.
I'm with you too, Secretary. And you're exactly right. In 2018, Vice President Biden traveled throughout the country, no matter the district, red district or not, to make sure that Democrats would win. And that's got to be one of the biggest reasons why Donald Trump and the Republicans are afraid of Joe Biden. If you look at polls from around the country, whether it's Michigan, Ohio, Florida, Arizona, he leads Donald Trump, but also he lifts all boats. so that competitive Senate races like we've got in Arizona and beyond are within reach for us to take back the Senate, which we need.
Down ballot, yeah.
Down ballot. Congresswoman Escobar was talking about immigration, and as the VP has said, he's committed on the very first day to undoing all of the horrible executive actions that Donald Trump has put in place, including the Remain in Mexico policy, the public charge policy, all of the horrible things that he's done to migrants and to immigrants, and on the very first day, introduce comprehensive immigration reform. And because he's in the Senate, because he knows how things work, because he's trusted, because he brings people together, he's the one who's going to be able to get this done.
Right.
I also want to say that we also appreciate Vice President Biden's care about children. You know, we have the highest a child poverty level in California than in any other state. And we know that the Congress right now, they're working on that fourth package. And we do want them to be sure to include, Veronica, I know you're listening, to be sure to include increasing the child tax credit for children that are in poverty, you know. And then we have to think about, in the future, of course, taking care of the people that take care of children, the people that are out there doing the child care. And then early childhood education for everybody. Our foster kids, you know, so many of them that become homeless once they get out of those foster homes. And we've done some good stuff in California, but we want to make sure that that happens all over the country to take care of our children that need so much help here in our country.
Absolutely.
I think that,
Please.
Go ahead, Chris.
No,
I was just going to say, I think that Biden's going to be great for us as well in terms of our children that are currently incarcerated or put in probation camps, because I know that he cares about restorative reforms, and all of that is necessary. Those young people don't need to be in prison or in our probation camps. They should be given opportunities to go back into the community, receive training, mental health, substance abuse, whatever they need, included housing, and they can get back and reunite. Our scientists' data tells us that it works if you make that investment. And I know Joe Biden is very strongly supportive of those restorative justice reforms that we started under Obama, but didn't get quite through with all of it.
That's right. Let me do this as we get close to the end of our time together tonight. I want to go around the room again. And this time I want you to answer the final question and close this out on an optimistic note about what gives you hope about this coming November. What are you hopeful for?
Well, I like to, again, I'm going to quote the previous speakers about the numbers of Latinos that we are, and that we can mobilize our Latino community and talk to everybody else about how important it is to get Joe Biden elected. All of us, we just have to do as much work as we can, talk to everybody that we know. We cannot continue to live in this situation that we find ourselves here in the United States of America right now. And it's going to be up to us to do the work. And so we've got to make that full commitment that would get Joe Biden elected as president of the United States. And it's not just for our families, and it's not even just for the Latino community, it's for the whole of the United States of America. And we, with our numbers, we can be the deciders in the election. So we've got to make that commitment to do the work to make sure that we get Joe Biden elected as president of the United States of America. Sí se puede.
Yes, sí se puede, sí se puede. Yes, we can.
You know, I'm hopeful that every American realizes we cannot have another 4 years of Donald Trump, that kind of destructiveness will ruin all of us. And I'm hopeful that they will see what a great leader Vice President Biden is. But while I'm a big believer in hope, none of that will happen organically. And that means that each and every one of us, we've got to make sure that we don't just vote ourselves. And I'm speaking to the folks watching at home. That means we each have an obligation to, within our circle of friends, within our family, within our neighbors, our neighborhoods, within our voting precincts, within every arena that we can touch and influence, that we are getting people to the polls. It means that we're making sure that everyone we know has voted early, if you have early voting in your state, or if somebody needs a mail-in ballot, that they get their mail-in ballot, that they're reminded about the hours and locations of the polling stations, that if they need a ride, you're giving them a ride. It also means that you're writing checks for Vice President, I already called him President, Vice President Biden, to make sure his campaign has the fuel it needs to run. It means that that the morning after Election Day, that morning you wake up and you know you have done everything humanly possible to make sure that Vice President Biden is our president, that we wake up to a new day in America with lots of hope to go around for everyone, and that you were a part of making it happen.
That's right.
I would just say, Chris, that I think it's an exciting time for us here in California. We're going to be able to vote by mail for the November election. So vote early so that you can then go out to other parts of the country to help Joe Biden get elected. California does that really well. And I know, Dolores, you and I have been on that campaign trail for other candidates, and it works well. But we need to make sure that our young people are not left behind, that they really understand that the future is theirs. We don't leave it to, well, maybe I'm disappointed because someone that I thought might have been a good candidate didn't make it. Now is the time for us to refocus, recharge, energize, talk about those issues that are really going to get our young people out and give them a future of hope. I know so many young people that are thinking there's no hope. They've got to stay with their parents because they can't afford to get out of their own, neighborhoods. There's lack of good jobs. Education access is being cut right now as we speak, and they're looking at a future very fearful. And that's what Trump wants them to think. And fear can't dominate. Hope, humility, and love have to dominate. And Biden has all those qualities. And we need to also open up our pocketbooks, because as we help to fund the campaign, we need to fund places around Latino communities so we have our pop-up centers there so we continue to drive home that message.
That's right. No peso, no say so, as a good friend says.
And Chris, I would like to just ask everybody, I would like to invite everybody to join Hilda, because she's already agreed to do this, and myself to celebrate my 90th birthday party.
Wow. Feliz cumpleaños.
Gracias. And that's going to be on May the 30th. At 6 p.m. So I would like to invite you all to join me. And also I would like to invite the Vice President. Maybe he can also join us and so to celebrate my 90th birthday this year. So, I think it's wonderful that we're all together here and we're all going to work together and reach out to everybody that we know. So we're going to make this a fun campaign. And I know John will make that happen. Okay, so it's not going to be a dull campaign.
It's not a spectator sport. Democracy is not a spectator sport.
That's right.
We got to knock on doors. We got to stomp. We got to make calls. And Latin people, we're good at communicating. We're good at being loud. We're good at being heard. And that's what we got to do this fall. Reach out to everybody. And I know Biden is a decent human being. He's going to bring back decency, respect, unify us, and lead us the way we should be led, not divide us.
Exactly.
That's right. Well, folks, as we've talked about
un corazón latino. Joe Biden has a corazón latino.
I'm telling you, Latinos will never have a better friend in the White House. We'll never have a better friend in the White House than Joe Biden. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. There is so much at stake in this election. And as Joe Biden says, our best days are ahead of us. And really the story of America is ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That's what this campaign is all about. Please join us. Go to joebiden.com. We need you. Sí se puede.
Sí se puede.
Sí se puede.
Yes, we can. Feliz cumpleaños. Thank you
Happy
all.
birthday.
I was so lucky to be in this panel.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing.
Yeah.